Hey everyone, and welcome back to What Did I Miss, where today I will be exploring the Q as a race as well as the characters that we have seen on various Star Trek series. Ever since the news that John de Lancie would be reprising the role he made famous on The Next Generation for the upcoming seasons of Picard, fans have been heavily anticipating his arrival. And yes, you did hear right, I did say seasons of Picard, as the actor himself has confirmed that he has shot footage for the second as well as the third season of the series. We are sure to see a very different Q as he meets a very different Picard when the second season is released in 2022, so I thought it would be fun to take a look back at the history of this nigh omnipotent race of beings and how it may affect the character's future. This is always more fun when I hear from you, so let me know in the comments what your favorite appearance of Q is. The one with the most upvotes I will post in an upcoming Star Trek video. Also, I want to congratulate our subscribers who won a Funko Pop in the last contest. Be sure to be subscribed so you know when we start our next one, and you can also follow us on Twitter or at our other YouTube channel WDIM Plus for updates. Not much is known about the beginnings of the Q, as we are led to believe by one member of the race that they started out as humanoid beings and evolved to where they are now. Where that is a place known as the Q Continuum, which is an extra-dimensional plane of existence that the Q society inhabits. However, the most famous Q, played by John de Lancie, mentions at one point that the Q have always existed, but at times he is known to be a less than reliable narrator. The Q have been shown to be able to bend space and time to their will, and can create as well as reconstitute matter. They can even grant humanoid beings the same powers that they possess, as well as take those powers away, and have their powers taken away by members of their own race. While the exact number of Q is never known, they do have a large enough population to be able to influence the entire galaxy while also being able to enter into a civil war which costs many lives on both sides. Having said that, members of the race can be killed, but when one is killed, it is known to cause destructive events such as supernovae. But it seems that the main purpose of the race is to observe other races' evolution, as their own existence has become boring and tedious, so they have resigned themselves to meddle in other civilizations' affairs. In that regard, you could say that the Q are like an exaggerated version of Starfleet, having become bored with their own planet and solar system and designed a way to meddle in the affairs of other civilizations. Members of the race can procreate as Q or as members of the race they are inhabiting, such as when two Q who are living as humans conceived a human child with Q-like powers. The first appearance of the race was not until the pilot episode of The Next Generation, Encounter at Farpoint. Although if you read Star Trek novels, you probably want to argue that the Squire of Gothos is the first representation of the species, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to try and stay on canon. In Encounter at Farpoint, the crew of the Enterprise are greeted by John de Lancie's character as they travel to the furthest reaches of the universe that has been explored by humanity. Q puts humanity on trial with the captain of the Enterprise, Jean-Luc Picard, as its defendant. The captain as well as the rest of the crew are able to prove to Q that humanity is a race worth letting evolve by choosing an intellectual solution over a violent one, and are allowed by Q to continue their journey with the knowledge that the trial of humanity is still ongoing. This episode was a remarkable introduction to the character and the race, as it serves as just a taste of what is to come in the future, as Q would go on to accost Starfleet crews in 12 more episodes after this one. Q would once again torment the crew of the Enterprise D during their first season in the episode Hiding Q, in which Q attempts to bestow the powers he has on First Officer William Riker, who eventually refuses him. This appearance was important because not only did it show the resolve of the crew of the Enterprise after they each refuse any of the gifts that Q offers them, but it also shows off Q's mischievous nature. Probably the most memorable and consequential appearance of the character in the Star Trek universe is the second season episode Q Who. In it, Q offers to join the crew of the Enterprise as he is obviously curious about them, but his request is denied by the captain as he would rather conquer the unknown than be helped along by an agent of chaos. Q, being not happy at this rebuttal, sends the Enterprise over 1,000 light years away from their current position into a then unknown portion of the galaxy known as the Delta Quadrant. It is there they first meet another essential species to the history of the Next Generation and Starfleet, the Borg, as they encounter a single vessel that nearly destroys the ship before Picard has to plead for Q's help to escape. Curiously, there are many that believe that Q was actually helping humanity by preparing them for the Borg, and specifically this vessel that is inbound for the planet Earth. As the audience is shown in the series Star Trek Enterprise, that a paradox was created during the event shown in the movie First Contact, in which a Borg vessel was destroyed in the past and whose debris contained drones or members of the race that would later be reactivated many years later and send a signal back to the Delta Quadrant. So like in many instances in which we see Q intersect with moments of history, it seems that they, and at least he, has a passing interest in the success of humanity. In his next appearance on The Next Generation in the third season episode Deja Q, Q has been stripped of his powers by the Continuum and requests asylum on the Enterprise. Captain Picard of course grants this request, but starts Q off in the brig until eventually he is able to assist Data and LaForge in engineering with an issue impacting thousands of lives. But of course, a race of aliens that Q had tormented in the past comes back to seek their revenge on the now powerless Q, and he ultimately risks his own life in an attempt to save the Enterprise, which allows for him to return to the Continuum. Although not talked about as much as the last two appearances on this list, I love this episode, and not only do we get to see another Q in actor Corbin Burnson, but also a great ending with Q coming back with a band of mariachis and granting Data his first big laugh. In the 4th season episode Cupid, Q returns again, but this time not to offer Captain Picard a chance at immortality, but a chance to prove his love for a woman named Vash. The episode itself is a bit silly, with Captain Picard and other crew members acting like characters from Robin Hood, but it's interesting to point out that Q felt that he owed Picard a debt after the events of Deja Q and deemed it necessary to repay it. Q is absent from the 5th season of Star Trek The Next Generation, but returns in the 6th season episode True Q, in which a human woman named Amanda Rogers starts to exhibit powers. Q appears to the crew and reveals that Amanda is in fact a Q that was born to parents that were also Q but chose to live as human beings. This episode showed that not all Q were like the character played by John de Lancie, and that some even chose not to use their powers and live as human beings instead of being omnipotent. The next appearance by Q was not on the series The Next Generation, but rather on the 1st season of the series Deep Space Nine. In the episode Q-less, Q arrives on the station and even has a direct confrontation with Commander Benjamin Sisko, played by Avery Brooks, who promptly hits him in the face, an action that Q believes Jean-Luc would never do. The episode also includes Vash, as it is obvious that he's still interested in her as well, but is also notable for when Sisko admits that the Federation has warned all commanders about the race. Later, in the 6th season, Q returns for another classic adventure with Picard on The Next Generation in the episode Tapestry, in which he allows Picard to relive a past event and see how his life would have been if he had made changes to himself back then. Not only do we learn a lot about Picard in this episode, but we also see that Q has the power to control life and death, as well as send people back in time to change their present. In the very last episode of The Next Generation, the 2-part finale All Good Things, Q is there to put humanity once again on trial, but in this case, the test appears to be centered on Picard himself. In the episode, Picard seems to be shifting from different periods of time, and at first is made to believe that it is due to a cognitive defect. But instead, Q is testing him to show the continuum that humanity does have the capability to evolve from their current state. Picard, of course, passes the test, and Q sends him on his way with the threat that they will see each other once again. This marks the last time that Q would see Picard on the series The Next Generation, but he would still encounter the crew of the USS Voyager on 3 more occasions. First, and probably the most thought-provoking appearance of the Q in the 2nd season episode Death Wish, another member of the Q who eventually takes on the name Quinn asks for asylum so that he can end his life. This episode gave the audience a very intimate look at the societal workings within the Q continuum and asked some difficult questions about the value of life. It also served as another example of how the Q have affected humanity's evolution, as it is shown that this Q interfered with many events in Earth's past, which include helping a forefather of Commander Riker, which allowed Jonathan Frakes to guest star in the episode. This episode would also set the tone for the appearances of Q on Star Trek Voyager, as instead of Q affecting the trajectory of the crew of the ship, it appeared that now the audience would get to learn more about Q, their society, as well as their motivations. This continued in the 3rd season Voyager episode The Q and the Gray, when the audience is taken to the continuum, which now appears as an American Civil War period piece due to an actual civil war within the continuum. Q believes that creating a child with Captain Janeway will prevent further casualties, but ultimately returns to his relationship with another member of his race as they procreate. This episode also showed how when the Q went to war, the result were dozens of supernovae around the ship, and it is possible for the Q to kill each other. In his final appearance on Voyager, the 7th season episode Q2, we meet the young Q that was created in this prior appearance. If the actor playing Q Jr. looks like a spitting image of his on-screen dad, it is because the actor playing the character is Keegan de Lancie, John de Lancie's actual son. In the episode, Junior is forced to live without his powers, similar to what happened to his father on the Enterprise D, but he regains them after he proves his humanity and his father stands up for him in front of the continuum. Q also shaves a few years off the return trip home for Voyager, but does not cheat and get them home all the way, as to not set a bad example for his son. This episode was mainly about the younger Q, but it once again showed how Q does care even if he acts like he doesn't. His final appearance to this point was in animated form, as he briefly affects the crew of the USS Cerritos on Star Trek Lower Decks. This appearance was more of a fun love letter to the character, as he is once again shown in the ceremonial robes he wore in his first and last appearance on The Next Generation. Many people are speculating as to the purpose of Q and the future of Star Trek, myself included, and I've created a theory about that which I will link here and in the description if you would like to watch it. But it would be hard to argue that since the first appearance of the character, few others have had as much impact on the franchise. With him appearing in the final 2 seasons that pertain to the character Jean-Luc Picard, it is very fitting that he will be involved, and hopefully we will see many callbacks to their adventures throughout the years. I hope that you enjoyed this trek, forgive the pun, down memory lane and looking back at all the appearances of Q in the history of Star Trek. I, for one, am very excited to see the character again, and will be covering his return as well as anything else Star Trek on this channel. So be sure to subscribe if you have not already, and hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Just think of hitting that like button like Q snapping his fingers and making everything better. Thank you very much for clicking on this video, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?